So today we're going to learn about what's the blood made up of and what functions do all these different parts have. But first, let's have a look at the last lesson and what we learned and have a quick recap. So I want you to pause the video and see if you can answer those questions. You don't have to write the questions in your book, just the answer in a full sentence. And then you can correct them once I tell you the answers and give yourself a tick for getting them right. Okay, so what is the circulatory system comprised of? Three things. We said the heart, the blood vessels, and the blood. What are the three functions of the circulatory system? Well, there was a picture of a bus for transport, so transporting glucose and carbon dioxide and hormones. There was also a picture of a shield for protecting us against infection. And there is a picture of a thermometer, which shows that the blood helps us to control our temperature or regulate our temperature. Now, what substances does the blood transport to our cells? It transports two things, glucose and oxygen that's needed for respiration to give us energy. What substance does the blood take away from our cells? It takes away carbon dioxide. And how does the circulatory system protect us? It protects us by forming scabs or blood clots to stop blood loss. And also it protects us against infections such as bacteria and viruses. Okay, so if you see this image here of a pen, it means that you have to take down the notes on that slide in your copy. If you see the image of a camera, it means that you should take a picture of the work in your copy so that that can be used as evidence to show that you've completed the work at the end of the week. First, let's have a look at what are the four components of the blood and what are their functions. So the first tiny piece of the blood, it's these really small cell fragments and they're called platelets. Platelets. And then you've got this thing here, which is a cell and it's red. Can you remember what that is? Yeah, it's a red blood cell. You've got another cell here and it's white, so that must be a white blood cell. And then all of this sits in fluid called the plasma. So what are the four components of the blood? That's platelets, red blood cells, white blood cells, and plasma. And we'll talk about their functions in a minute. We see the picture of this, or the image of the pen here, so that means that you're going to need to write down the four components of the blood, which are platelets, red blood cells, and white blood cells, and plasma. So pause the video now and do that. Okay, so you should be able to answer that question. What is the blood composed of? If you need to pause the video and memorize those four things, do so now and then answer it. Okay, so you should be able to know that the blood is composed of plasma, platelets, red blood cells, and white blood cells. Very good. Let's move on and look at the functions. So before we do that, I want to have a little bit of a memory game with you. We're going to look at each of the cells, we're going to talk about them, and we're going to talk about their functions, and then see if you can, what you can remember at the end of it. So let's have a start. Okay, platelets. And these tiny cell fragments are, the function is used in blood clotting. So remember we said that if you get a cut, you get a blood clot. What is a blood clot? Well, if you look at this diagram here, you can see that cut in the skin, or the blood vessel, and then all of these red blood cells start to clump together. And the platelets help them to do that. So these little platelets help the red blood cells to clump together. There's also a protein in here which you don't really need to know about. It's kind of cool. It's called fibrin. That helps to keep that blood clot together. And that blocks the blood vessel and stops you from losing blood. So platelets, the function is in blood clotting. So you have to try and remember that. And I would think about, like, I'd just say platelets, their function is in blood clotting. And they help the red blood cells to stick together so that we don't lose any blood. Do you want to try and say that back to yourself now? Okay, that's the first bit of the memory game. Let's move on. Okay, so blood cells, what do they do? Well, they help to fight infection. So they help to fight things like bacteria and viruses. And if you look at this white blood cell here, you can recognize the big nucleus there, and it's got cytoplasm around it, and it's got a membrane. Do you know why you know that definitely is an animal cell and not a plant cell? Can you remember why? Very good. It doesn't have a cell wall around it, and it doesn't have a large permanent vacuole. There's no chloroplasts either. Right, so this white blood cell, you can see there's a food particle here, or it could be a bacterium, and it kind of basically envelopes it, it engulfs it, and that helps to destroy the bacteria or the virus. Okay, so white blood cells, their function is to fight infection such as bacteria and viruses. Well done. Right, next one, red blood cells. So they've got something called hemoglobin inside them. It's a protein with iron in it, and the oxygen binds to that hemoglobin, and the red blood cells transport that hemoglobin all around the body. So, or oxygen, should I say, all around the body. So what do red blood cells do? They've got a special molecule inside them called hemoglobin. The oxygen attaches to that hemoglobin. So red blood cells help to carry oxygen all around the body. See if you can remember that. Last one, plasma. So plasma is all about transport. The fluid that you have in the blood, and it transports oxygen and glucose and hormones, and also things like urea, which you'll find in your urine. Can you remember that? So see if you can memorize that. Give yourself, pause the video and do that now. Okay. So now you should be able to match all of these up. So what we've got are the key words here. These are the functions. So these are the parts of the blood, and these are the functions. So you should be able to write these down in your book and then see which ones they match to. Okay, see what the functions are. And you can see the symbol here means you have to take down everything on the slide, and you also have to take a picture of it to evidence your work. So pause the video now and have a go at that. It might take you a little while. Okay, let's have a look. Platelets. What do they do? Did you get it? They help to clot the blood. Very good. So give yourself a tick if you've got that correct, and if not, make your corrections in your book now. Plasma, what does that do? Very good. It transports blood cells, carbon dioxide, and urea. Did you get that right? Give yourself a tick if you did. If not, make a correction. Red blood cells, what do they do? They transport oxygen to the cells. Again, give yourself a tick if you've got it correct. If not, make your correction. Last one, white blood cells. What do? They protect the body from infection. So well done if you've got all of those correct. Right. This is a blood sample, and we can spin that, and the heaviest things go to the bottom, the lightest things are at the top, and we can separate out all the layers. So we can look at the percentage of each component of the blood. So we can look at maybe the percentage of plasma, of red blood cells, and white blood cells. So this here is the plasma, and it makes up 5% of the blood. It's quite a lot. What do you think these ones are here? They're white blood cells, very good, and they're platelets as well, and they're only 1% of the blood. And the rest, then you can see, I'm sure you can guess what part of the blood this is, and what percentage they take up. Very good. It's red blood cells, and they take up about 42%. Okay, so make sure that you've got all of that taken down from in your copy, and you can take a picture of that. Okay, right now, you should be able to answer all of these questions. So what I would do now is take the time to memorize your work, and then you ask yourself the question and say it out loud. So what is the blood composed of? Can you mention the 4 things? Plasma, red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. What is the function of plasma? Transport things like urea, hormones. What is the function of red blood cells? They transport oxygen around the body. What is the function of white blood cells? They help to fight off bacteria and viruses. And what is the function of platelets? They're used in blood clotting. And the platelets help the red blood cells to clump together, and they also have this fibrin protein around them to help them their shape and reduce blood loss. This is a little bit of research that you can do yourself independently. So what is a transfusion? And why would someone have one? Okay, well done on the work for today's lesson. I will see you in the next lesson.